Now, Apollo 17 is slowly approaching its 50th anniversary. Do you sometimes feel a bit disappointed that we haven't been on the moon, or at least at the moon, with humans for 50 years?
Absolutely. I I'm amazed it's taken 50 years to do what we're about to start again. Um, I'll tell you another human story that's kind of funny in this.
Nice.
On Apollo 17, we were in translunar coast. We had gone to the moon, been there for 3.5 days, done trans-earth injection. We were coasting home. It was very quiet at night. The crew was asleep. And the guys kind of, came up around in the room, kind of came up. This happened fairly often, not too often, but they came up around my console. And I stood up and we were just talking about, and there was a little bit of, a couple of the guys said, I really hate to see this end. We're really hitting our stride now and really doing this and getting it done. And I said, yeah. And we listened and we exchanged ideas. And finally, I said, maybe it's not all that bad. This will free us up to go forward. And this shows you what kind of predictor I am of the future. I said, in 20 years, we'll be on Mars. And I really thought we would. That was in 1972 that I said that. 1992, we didn't quite make it back to the moon. So I'm not much of a one to look forward, I guess. But it has really surprised me that it's taken this long. And, it's some ways understandable, but because of the politics and the world situation but I think it mostly politics and the decision to make that rather than going on deeper in space and do the shuttle was okay because we developed a great partially reusable spaceship for getting people in cargo into low Earth orbit, but that was as far as they could go. The tremendous accomplishment. It flew 135 times, which is pretty amazing in 30 years. But it hung us up in low Earth orbit. And then we got the ISS out of that, which is another great machine that's helping understand the longer term effects on humans and in spaceflight and weightlessness particularly. So I think we've been kind of hung up and we finally got a chance here to break out. And a part of that puzzle is the commercial piece, which I think was also late in coming. I was trying to, when I was center director at the Johnson Space Center, I talked to the contractors they came to see me fairly often, that you ought to put some of your own money up and get into this business rather than just waiting for a government contract. No, their shareholders wouldn't like that. It's too risky. But you finally had a couple of billionaires come along that they have done something that I wish had been done a long time ago. And I think what we're going to see, this is a prediction now. So, remember, Griffin made it, and it may not be very good. I think low Earth orbit is going to be the domain of the commercial sector, taking people and cargo up and down. I think is going to fall eventually totally to the commercial sector, which is great. That leaves NASA to go deep, go into deep space, explore, get back to the exploration and the frontier pushing. Low Earth orbit is a lot easier to understand. We know it. We've been there a gazillion times. Still risky, and that'll bite you. And all these systems are going to get their nose bloodied sooner or later. But if you do anything, lifting off the ground, even in an airplane, you do enough of it, it's risky, and you're going to have an effect from it. So 17 kind of put the cap on it. I think the commercial came along, and now we've got Artemis. The Artemis people will tell you, and this is kind of a final point on this part of the topic, but that they are standing on the shoulders of Apollo in order to get Artemis to work. And that I very much, being a part of the Apollo era, appreciate that. But they've got so much better tools, better technology, better things to do with. Rendezvous automatically is nothing. They can land first stages in the commercial sector.
Yes.
So, yeah, you know what I think the biggest thing that Artemis will get out of Apollo, other than Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo in Greek mythology, I think the fact that we just did it takes that piece of the puzzle out. That in Apollo, we got humans off the Earth to the moon and back. And we did it with technology that was nowhere near what we have now. And I think the fact that we did that is probably the biggest accomplishment that Apollo or Artemis can stand on, because in our era, it had never been done. We thought it could be done, but we were by no means sure you could glue enough of this big hardware together and hold it together with all this energy and all these moving parts and capsules and things, and get them to the moon and get them back. But we did it, and we did it 6 times. So I think the fact that we got that puzzle out of their way, they can now really, really move and just get it done. They got new systems to check out, and you've seen what it's taken to get Artemis 1 off. There'll be more of that. Maybe not Artemis. Maybe they're going to make it on the 14th of November. Maybe they'll make it this time, but it's a difficult business. It's not easy, but at least they know it can be done, and that's got to take a little of that uncertainty off the front end, and that's because we did it in Apollo.
Wow.
Well,
Gerry.
I think we have to look at our schedule a little
Yes.
bit. How much more can you give us? Because I think we have
I can
to
give
ask
you-
some questions.
I can give you another 15 minutes, and then I got to go. I let the time get away from
Wow.
me.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 minutes, because I guess we have to cut some questions short.
Yes. Okay. Karin, you can put your Ron Aaron's story.
No, I cut
No,
that one out.
Okay.
I cut that one out. Let's maybe just get if there are some special moments of 17 or some critical moments which are not so well known, to have a little reference more to 17. Or was it completely clean?
Apollo 17 was a clean mission. It was a good mission. We had very little problems on the lunar surface, particularly. And I guess the biggest one was when Cernan hooked his suit on the fender of the rover and tore it off. And they were throwing up dirt. Same thing had happened on 16. We finally figured out how to use checklist covers and all, and clip them on and make another fender so they wouldn't throw the dust over the top of them in the rover. But as I say, 17 was very interesting because we did have a lunar scientist, Jack Smith, who knew a lot about the lunar and still does, still studies it. And he brought something to it that was very unique. And it kind of showed us what I think expeditions to the moon in the future will look like. There'll be a mixture of scientists and pilots and mission specialists and so forth and so on. It'll be a team. And of course, we didn't have a habitat to stay there, and hopefully one day we will, where you really get longer stay times and do things that are entirely different than what we could do even on 17. But 17 had no big moments once we got it launched. It had a problem getting off the ground here on Earth, but once we got it launched, it was fine. There is one human interest story. I'll tell it quickly. Apollo 17 was the last mission, and so we always played music to the crew to wake them up, and when they were sleeping on the moon, even sleeping in orbit or translunar. Well, the devil made me do it, but I played my school's fight song, if you will. We call it the war hymn, to wake them up. And the exchange that we had, the ground, and Gene Cernan was really funny. He said, "I've been awakened to a lot of things, but never by the Aggie war hymn." And he knew what it was, and he knew who had done it. It was me. I said, "We're going to wake him up with my school's fight song." So anyway, another little piece of making it fun going to the moon. And I remember that very clearly. But it was a great mission, and it was a great end to a great program.
I will put a question to the young Artemis flight controller generation, because you were a flight director. So, what do you think of the new young Artemis flight controller generation? What might be the biggest challenges for them? What did you tell them when you talked to them?
Well, I'm very confident in the group. I've stayed close to them, for one thing. In fact, I was just in New York doing an Apollo 17 event already at a museum, and I was with Holly Ridings, who is she just made a change, but she has been the leader of the Flight Director Office. She's the chief flight director. She's now working on Gateway as deputy program manager, which is a piece of ornament. But I've stayed very close to the program. I stayed very close to mission control, the flight controllers. I don't have any worries at all about their ability to pull us off. The same with the people at the Cape. I hear some of the old guys saying, they're not as good as we were, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe it. That's typical of older guys, I can tell you. I don't believe it at all. The decision-making process that I talked about earlier is a little bit of a concern that they may get too many people involved in some of the decision-making, but maybe not. Because one of the things that happens when you get into a risky business and you have to step up and make tough decisions is sometimes you see the people that don't know the subject too well kind of back off. And the people in mission control will know the subject extremely well, and so will the engineering people at the Johnson Space Center and Kennedy Space Center and Marshall Space Center and Space Flight Center, all over the agency, and the contractors. These folks are good. One thing I do notice about the current flight controllers that will handle Artemis is that they're a little bit older than we were. Which again is, I guess, a natural tendency. They have to go through, for one thing, they go through a heck of a certification process now. And they have to go through a number of simulations and dry runs and all kinds of things. And it takes a long time. I think it takes a couple of years now to qualify a flight controller when they come in. Some of the positions. and particularly to be a flight director. So it's a different makeup, and they tend to be a little bit older, and maybe that's okay. I liked what we had. We shaped the program ourselves in many respects, particularly the flight control function under Chris Kraft's leadership. That function evolved to what it became, and I think this is going in more stamped out, what they will do, how they will do it, and but the people, I tell you what, you look in the eyes of those folks, and they look just like we did. They're ready to go and take it on.
Karin, you've organized this interview, so you have to pick the last question. Let's look in our script. Just choose one.
Now, quickly coming back to 17. First point: did you feel the political impact of cutting down everything, going into the last missions, cutting down stuff, etc.? Did it have an influence on the practical work? And second part of the question: how much during all this time were you aware that you are part of history? You were making history, and how was it to feel the responsibility, to deal with the responsibility, or was that never really a question that came up in the moment?
The answer to the question about did I feel the pressure or the impact of political ending and so forth, frankly, I didn't feel much worry. I felt like we would go on. Like I said, I predicted we'd be on Mars in 20 years, and so I think the working people, and we were so busy, we didn't have time to reflect too much on the politics and what it all meant, because we thought it would just keep going on and on and on. And that's why I was trying to kind of tell my team, maybe it's okay because we're going to keep going here and it'll be all right. So I didn't feel the crunch and we never took our eye off the ball because it was 17 was the last mission. I mean, we were as involved in that mission as we were in Apollo 11 because we knew it was very risky, and it's a risky business. And so anyhow, that felt kind of normal that we were just ending a program and now we'll go on to the next one. Now that was at my level. I'm sure there are people higher up, particularly, that were worried about the future, but it just never got down as low as I was, and or down to flight controls level. We were already thinking about Skylab because that was more Apollo hardware to fly. So, and your second question was about the what? Repeat that.
Being part of history.
Oh,
in the whole program.
Excellent question. I've often been asked about, did I realize that we were being a part of carving something that would be a part of history forever? And I can honestly say I didn't. I was so busy. We flew so many times, and it was from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And I knew what we were doing was important. It was important to the country. But I never thought that 50 years later, people would want to hear some of the anecdotes and the stories and meet people like me. That never occurred to me. And I never thought of it as this big step in history that's going to be taken. And then about 20 or 30 years after the program ended, it started dawning on me that the interest in Apollo was not waning. In fact, it was building. Maybe it's because we hadn't gone back to the moon and didn't. Now, after Artemis, once they land on the moon, maybe maybe we will really be history then. But right now, we're actively, all of us that are still around, or many of us that are still around, are still. I'm with guys like Charlie Duke and Jack Schmidt and Jack Lausma. I mean, you just name it over and over and over. I'm with those guys a lot, and we're talking to people. And we're talking to people about Apollo. And we're talking to people about Artemis. We're really trying to. We think it's time. Those of us that were there, to pass the torch from Apollo to Artemis, because these guys and gals need the opportunity to be successful, and they got to have the backing of all of us. And they can use us as a sounding board. They do. The public can even use us, and they do. I've been on commentary on the first 2 Artemis launches, and I'll be on it again. But it is it's time to pass the torch, and we need to get on with the exploration of deep space. It's got to start at the moon, and we're a ways from doing it Mars, but we could do that too. I won't be around, but we can do it. So I think it's a very interesting time for us. We're in transition now. Let's hope that torch gets passed soon, and we can start talking about Artemis.
Oh yes, Gerry.
I think that's a great finish.
That's a perfect finish, I guess. Okay. What should I say? Thank you very much. I'm so humbled, and it's very emotional. Maybe I will cry a little bit after this, but it's so great to have you here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Karin. I've always thought it was an obligation to tell the story, because we were there and saw it happen. It was done with public money. The taxpayer or the shareholders, and they deserve to know. And the European side of the equation has always been important. It's going to be more important now. It has been for the last several years in ISS. And I particularly like what ESA and the individual countries have done. So I'm happy to do it for you. And had it not been for Karin, it's hard to turn her down. I might not have made it, but you've got a great lead there in front of you.
Oh yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you guys, and I will see you later.
See you later. I hope so. I will write a mail
sure
after this, and
make sure
I have to come down.
Make sure I get a final copy. I'd like to see how it turns out.
Okay. Yes.
You don't have to when you're going to post it or whatever.
We send you the links immediately when it's there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Gotta run. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.